Good morning, good afternoon. I am going to give it a few minutes. And see if we have some folks to join. All right. Happy Sunday. Happy Juneteenth celebration weekend. And good afternoon. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Everybody must be on the East Coast so far. Absolutely. Happy Juneteenth Eve. Happy Juneteenth celebration weekend. Happy all of the things. I have my shirt today. Hello, hello, hello. Thank you all for being here. I am sorry I was not here last weekend to spend some time with everybody. I'm happy to see you all. I guess I'll go ahead and get started and then we can get going. So let me change my screen and do this all proper like. There we go. All right, good morning or afternoon, wherever you are located, depending on what time zone you're in. My name is Jewel Pearson, and this is Miss Bohemian Soul TV. This is Creating Home, a Tiny House series, and this segment today that we'll get into is the What's Your Question segment in the series, where I answer frequently asked tiny house questions. I often have a subject that I'm sharing some information on, and then I kind of open it up to answer questions from others in the chat. And so to introduce myself, I like to say that I built a kind of fancy tiny house in 2015. And since that time, I have shared my journey to hopefully inspire others who are interested in the movement. I offer coaching and consultations to help others in their tiny house journey. And once this goes live and I get caught up on my series, you will be able to find the links to schedule with me in the video description below this video. And I like to serve up a lot of representation in the movement along the way. I like for us to be able to see ourselves in this movement. It's my intent to build figurative and literal community that is inclusive and accessible. And I hope that if you find this information in the video helpful, that you'll like it, you'll share it, you'll subscribe to the channel, and then also turn on the notifications so that you'll know when content is available and when I'm going live. All right. All right. Absolutely. Same to you all. So I don't have a presentation on a specific subject that I am sharing today. I didn't get to spend time with you all last Sunday, and I figured I would use today as just kind of a community gathering to answer questions that might be in the chat, and then also to catch everyone up on the stuff that I've been working on, and then maybe even have some conversation about what you all are doing around Juneteenth. And so last weekend, I was actually traveling and I had to cancel last minute because I just couldn't navigate travel and the YouTube conversation. So I had been invited, I think maybe November-ish, December-ish, to attend a family reunion in the Virginia area. Some elders in a family reached out to me to invite me to their family reunion. One of the elders in the community had seen some of the work I do around tiny houses and conversations that I've had around tiny house communities, etc. And they made the connection so that we could start talking about their land. They have quite a bit of land in the Virginia area, and it is, as is always, they're being courted by developers, but their land was purchased by newly freed enslaved people. It is believed that the the family members or family member that purchased this land actually was so light skinned that the people selling the property actually didn't know that they were black, and they feel like that's how and why so much land had been sold to that individual, which is a beautiful thing, and also sad at the same time at knowing the things that we've had to go through to acquire land, etc. So they have quite a bit of property that has been divvied up between the elders, and as the elders are passing on, they're continuing to pass that land down. And some of the older elders in the community are concerned because, as is always a challenge, some of the younger people in the family don't necessarily hold the same esteem, maybe that's the right word, or value. They don't place value around the property as it should be valued and as it should be seen. So one of the things that has been passed through each of the generations from the original purchaser was that they wanted that land to stay within the family. They wanted that land to stay within black ownership. And we know how hard it is for us to own land and how important it is for us to own land. Like when we talk about wealth building, we know that land is one of the main things that builds wealth and that has allowed our counterparts to be so successful. And we also know how the great land steal is happening, continues to happen, and we talk about that often. And so that is one of the main things that they were entrusted with this land, was to keep it in within their family and within black ownership. And for somebody who doesn't want to understand why that's important, they'll take offense to that, and that's not my audience that I ever cater to. So that's another conversation that I really don't care about, but I'll throw that out there. And so the conversations, and those conversations will be ongoing, are, ways to ensure that the family holds on to the land, what opportunities they have for usage of the land. And like I mentioned, one of the things that they're interested in is potential tiny house communities. The land is in a growing area, a lot of opportunity for the family, again, and why they're being courted so heavily by developers who are interested in the land. And so I didn't get to have a lot of conversation last weekend because, of course, it was their family reunion and that was the main focus. But I did get to do a tour of the area and see some of the land, and so hopeful that these conversations will continue and that there will be opportunity that I will be able to share later with this group. You all know building a community is what the big to do on my list. And when I think about building a community, I don't necessarily want to own land, but I do want to have an opportunity to build like a community prototype, figuring out all the details. I don't, again, don't, it doesn't have to be my land, but I want to have the opportunity to bring the vision that I have for a tiny house community to life. And so every opportunity that I have to speak to someone interested in community, that's always something that I'm, going to take advantage of. And so I will continue to share updates, and fingers crossed that this is something that comes to fruition. But one of the bonuses of my visit with this family, I'm going to share my screen. Was, let me see if I can make this bigger. Was getting to see this Harvey School for the Colored, Harvey Colored School. And this is a school that one of the elders that I was meeting with attended, and she, this school was kind of sitting back in some woods on some other property. It was, kind of in disarray, and it was a mission of hers to restore the school. And so she and two carpenters took the school apart, board by board. They numbered the boards. And I just want you to think about the intricacy of this project. So this woman who attended the school, and Miss Annie, she and two carpenters took the school apart. That it had been sitting in the woods. They wanted to obviously maintain the original school, so they took it apart board by board, numbered each of the boards, and I think she told me it took them 17 days to take the school apart. And then they moved the school to their land and put the school back together like a puzzle, numbering the boards, and then putting it back together so that they could maintain the integrity of the school. It was such an experience. This is a newspaper article, but I did share my own picture of having seen the school in real life on their property, and it was such an amazing experience and an honor to be able to visit the school. I had taken one of my friends with me just to go on the trip with me and go to the family reunion with me. Had no idea that we'd have an opportunity to visit this school. And my friend I consider her an educator extraordinaire. She is a fabulous educator. And when we got a chance to go into the school, like I said, we had no idea the school was on the property, and we got a chance to visit the school, and the interior of the school. And if you don't follow me on Instagram, you should, but I'm not sharing all of the pictures here, but you can see some of the interior of the school on my Instagram page. And the next thing I know, I'm talking to Miss Annie, but in the background, I hear my friend over there sniffling. Because it was such an honor. So it brought her to tears. Just obviously, it was emotional for me, but for an educator who spends time teaching students, who spends time in our educational system and understands the challenges that we have with the education system as Black people, the education system in learning our history, like just the whole gamut, the concerns that we have right now with this critical race theory, and just overall. So I just happened to hear her sniffling as I was talking to Miss Annie, and I knew it had just really overwhelmed her of the opportunity to be in that school and to understand what educators had to go through so many years ago to teach and our people had to go through just to even learn, to have the opportunity to learn. And so this again was the Harvey Colored School, and Miss Annie's husband, he told us a story where she had, on her Miss Annie's 57th birthday. Now I want you all to let that sink in. That this is something she did at 57. Her and two carpenters. He asked her what she wanted for her birthday, and she told him she wanted that school. So he bought the schoolhouse that had been sitting on someone else's property. Again, it had and again, Miss Annie went to the school, and so then they took that. You can see it right here. It sat there for 10 years. Last year I came home with 10 carpenters, and we took the school apart plank by plank, numbered it, and I hauled it home on the back of a trailer. It was a beautiful experience, and it's a absolutely. And so it is restored, and it's a family heirloom, obviously. And Miss Annie, has spent a lot of time sharing the history with her family, and people who visit the school can also share in that knowledge. And so, like I said, I'll keep you all posted. It was a beautiful trip, a beautiful opportunity there. Family reunion was very well organized, a lot of fun. It wasn't really hot, a badly hot day. They had a lot of, they had a good time, and it was nice to be able to participate within their family reunion. Yes, a beautiful, beautiful endeavor. Good afternoon. Hey, Hillsboro. I know where you are. Okay, Covington, Georgia. I know where Covington is. I lived in Lawrenceville. I actually worked in Conyers, so for a while I lived there, so not too far from Covington. And I have friends who live in Covington. Oh, absolutely. Okay, the next thing that I had prepared just to talk to was, let me share this screen. So just kind of in light of Juneteenth happening, the official holiday happening tomorrow. I know a lot of people are participating in events this weekend, and a lot of beautiful events. So I attended a Juneteenth celebration here that is ongoing. I think it actually started Thursday. And it goes through today. I believe today is the last day for it. And I think it's sponsored by the House of Africa. Don't start me to line. Don't believe everything I say, but I think that's right. Anyway, there was a very powerful artistic display that I got to see yesterday, and again, I've shared more of the pictures on my Instagram page. If you aren't following me, you should be, so that you can see the pictures. But this was part of the display that just kind of really stuck out for me. Let me see if that's where I wanted to start. So let me go back. This was my personal picture of the Harvey Colored School, stepping back to the conversation. This was standing in the front yard and getting to take a picture of the Harvey Colored School, and one of the pictures that I shared on Instagram. Okay, segueing back to this picture, again, part of the Juneteenth festival that celebration that I attended yesterday. And so this was a depiction of the quarters of the enslaved. And there were several very powerful pictures in the display. And the display was centered around Miss Harriet Tubman and the work that was being done at that time to help free the enslaved. Let me change that. I'm not saying slaves. Free the enslaved in the process that they went through and the challenges they went through, and it just went kind of all through um, the series. And again, I've shared it on my Instagram page, but I kind of was stuck at the quarters, and it reminded me so much of the conversations that I have with our community around tiny houses. And it reminded me of when I first started out in the movement 2015ish, and the resistance that I would often get from our community in talking about tiny houses. And I got it. I mean, I completely understood it. And I always say that this is a harder conversation to have within our community because we aren't that removed from tiny houses and having to live in tiny houses by no choice of our own. Multiple people in these small spaces, and the negative connotation that is often associated with tiny houses, not just poverty, but also the trauma associated with it for our community. And then knowing that in some of our rural areas, our family members, our older, the older generation, on until today, some of our family members still live in um, homes similar to this, and we know that there's still some challenges with access to plumbing and all of the things that make the conversation around the modern day tiny house and tiny house on wheels something that for us it's we're trying to get as far away from that as possible because of the negative association with it. And so then and now I continue to I understand it. I mean, I don't want to act like I don't understand it. I understand it completely. Success in the U.S. does not look like a tiny house. It doesn't look like a tiny house for us. It doesn't look like a tiny house for our counterparts. Success in the U.S. is big and a lot of stuff and all of those things. And so the conversations around tiny houses are challenging conversations. And I believe that they'll continue to be challenging conversations because not everyone, like, I always share the story of a housing advocate that I was speaking to around 2018, and he was an advocate for the unhoused, and I was speaking to him about the potential for tiny houses for the unhoused and how beneficial it could be. And he was like, I don't want to offend you, and he said that like several times. I don't intend to offend you, but I'd never advocate for a tiny house for the unhoused. And he said, I want people who don't have housing to have the same type of housing that I have. I want them to have access to all of the things. I wouldn't advocate for something less for them than I'd want for myself. And again, he kept saying over and over, I don't intend to offend you. And I was just listening, and I finally said, after he probably said, I don't intend to offend you, like the third time, I said, I'm not offended at all. I said, what I understand is that you don't understand the potentiality of tiny houses. And so I said, what I'd like to do is invite you to my house. And I said, no offense taken, let me just invite you to my house. And then the day he came to my house, he was kind of standing on the sidewalk, like before he even stepped in the yard and stepped inside the house. And he just stood there and he was looking at my house. And I realized then I'd already got him. Like, his understanding of what a tiny house could be and was so limited based on his personal experience. And then when he got to the door, he said, I owe you an apology. And he said, I had no idea. And then obviously as he came in, he was even more apologetic and overwhelmed, because and that's the thing that happens so often is people have their limited um, experience, their limited imagination, their so many limits. Like people can't think big box oftentimes, or when people start talking to me and they say, "Oh, you live in a small house," and oftentimes they'll start doing something like this, and they're asking questions like, "Do you have air condition? Do you stuff like that?" And I realize, I think they think I live in a doghouse, and it is there's so much opportunity, and I think that I do believe the conversation is shifting as I think the pandemic and quarantine and the loss of jobs and the loss of life and the trauma associated with the pandemic opened eyes and changed some trains of thought, and there was really a surge of people who I don't think understood tiny houses and the benefit of less being more, and those things. I think it started becoming clear as people started experiencing so much loss. But I also feel like now, and I won't say removed, 3 years later, there's a shift happening again. I mean, we see the shift in society as corporations and people are trying to move back to that fast pace, and where people are trying to act like there weren't some major lessons just learned a few years ago, and they keep saying they're trying to get back um, to normal. Will never be back to normal, and it wasn't even really normal then. It was just the status quo, and people were moving to the status quo. But I I know we have to continue this conversation. It's an important conversation. It is something where we have to think about. Like the I keep saying, when I look year after year at the numbers for housing, achieving housing ownership, and we can look at it year after year, and Black people remain at the bottom of the list for achieving home ownership year after year. Um, yes, there's small increases, but it's small increases, but it's still at the bottom of the list. And I go back to what the definition of insanity is. It's really just doing the same thing over and over again, and that is why I feel like this conversation is so necessary to have, in the opportunity to see housing in a different vein, and the vein that tiny houses offer. And I always say it doesn't have to be the long term dream. It can be a dream of, I'm doing this for 5 years, and my goal is to get out of debt and to save my money, and maybe I build my larger dream home, with cash, and so that I don't continue being in debt, and it puts me in a different situation. Or the opportunity, like not just tiny houses, like if you follow any of the RVers on Instagram, and you see families and they're living their best lives, and the children are being homeschooled, and the world is their school, and they're traveling, and just exploring and having opportunities that they wouldn't necessarily have in the traditional, living in a house, and you go to school, and you're in the rat race, you go to work, um, and then you come back home, and everybody's rushing dinner, homework, and then you keep doing that over and over until Friday afternoon, and then you have the short weekend. Um, it is like reassessing the priorities, and really getting to the things that are important. And so I feel like that is, and I think I've really gone a lot away from where I started in this original conversation, but it is to me one of the reasons why the conversation around tiny houses is important, and the opportunity to see the opportunity that tiny houses present in tiny house communities, and when we do own land, the opportunity to for our families to have homes and get to home ownership quicker. And again, even if it's not the long term goal, but um, it is, it is, hey there, it is something to be considered. And I'll continue to have these conversations and share, and hopefully allow people the opportunity to see, it's not, it doesn't have to have, like I'm not saying forget our history. I'm never saying that. I'm also not saying let's take ourselves backward. I'm saying reimagining home ownership, reimagining um, the opportunity to live and enjoy life differently. I'm saying not just continuing to do the same things that have not worked for our community, for the country, for the world. Um, and I also talked about like the benefits of tiny home ownership, the sustainability, and like, I mean, it's clear climate change is real, and the impact of climate change. Like, I just think there has to be some things that we all collectively, as individuals and collectively, think about doing, and we do things differently. And I feel like tiny houses, are part of that are a major part of that conversation. All right, I think I've covered that quite enough, and I'm off my own soapbox. Good morning from California, Southern California. That's okay, Judith. Thank you for being here. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Good morning from Chicago. If I didn't say good morning to you before, afternoon, afternoon. All right, that's all I had to talk about. Happy Juneteenth. Official tomorrow. I hope everybody's enjoying a celebration, spending some time with family, reflecting. Um, I think every year Juneteenth becomes um, more important to me. Maybe it's with age as you start to better appreciate things, and stuff starts to sink in and resonate so much more. All right, let me see if there's some questions. Yep, Charlotte. The event I went to is off of Central Avenue, House of Africa. They have some of the streets closed off. A lot of vendors, music. It was really a good time. I enjoyed it, and I will probably go back down for a little bit today. But if your bones aren't creaking with age, if they stop creaking, then that's another story. And that's the conversation I have with my mother every year when she says she's getting older. And I said, well, if you don't get older, the alternative to not getting older is not something that we really want to explore either. So let's just be grateful for the creaking bones. I'm right there with you. I understand that completely. All right, I don't see any questions in the chat. Is there anything, question somebody has? You should get down there today. I think today is the last day for the celebration in that area. So you should go down there, especially see this exhibit. It is very powerful. So if you get a chance, go down. Anybody have any questions I can help with today? I really got to figure out what I am going to do with this segment. I don't want to. I keep saying I don't want to waste time. I've really enjoyed being in community with you all. And I do want to have kind of open office hours. So if people are working on tiny house projects or they have questions, I can answer those questions. Oh, here's a question. Thank you. A question about taxes. Can you can't claim a tiny house on your yearly taxes as you would a regular house? A tiny house on wheels, no. A tiny house on foundation would go through, that is an excellent question, would go through, you go through the same process because you're going through the same building process. It's just smaller square footage. But a tiny house on wheels, no. Taxes associated with a tiny house on wheels have to do with DMV because the trailer that your tiny house is built on has a VIN number. And so, kind of like a vehicle, you pay taxes based on that VIN number for the trailer, but that's it. But the alternative to that, as I say, no, you can't claim it on your taxes. The money that you save in living in a tiny house on wheels is absolutely going to beat the money that you would get back on your taxes in claiming your home. I remember as a homeowner, I don't remember. It was like, I think it was the homestead exemption. I think that's what it was called. I don't remember it being very significant year after year. So I always like to say, we have to think about wealth building and home ownership in a different way. So when people say, well, you don't have the equity in a tiny house on wheels as you do in a conventional home, I always point out there's the money that I'm saving in owning my home and not paying a mortgage or a high mortgage. I can save that money and invest it. So there's another way to think about wealth building, and I would say the same thing. Thank you. Thank you. Have a great day. I would say the same thing about that exemption. That let's think about that a different way. So the exemption isn't astronomical, but there is in savings in living in a tiny house on wheels that could be that equivalent. Oh, thank you, Michelle. Thank you very much. I again, I think I will continue to have this, and I hope at some point some light bulb comes on and helps me figure out how this segment can, if there's opportunity for this segment to become more beneficial to everyone. Looking for unrestricted land now in Texas. Any advice? I'll refer you to some previous conversations where I've had around placement for tiny houses. And I also will say that unrestricted land, there are always some restrictions somewhere. And so before you just jump into buying something that says it's unrestricted and assume that you can do whatever you want to do, please do your full due diligence and ensure that you could still do what you want to do with that land with the tiny house. A lot of the conversation, if it's unrestricted land, if it has a structure on it, I talk about the possibility of putting tiny houses and connecting with existing structures that already have electricity and water. If it's unrestricted and there are no rules, just ensuring that you can get the access to the utilities for the tiny house on wheels, like that won't be any concerns. That really is the main thing, just making sure that you don't I'm pretty sure, I don't remember the city or the state. I'm pretty sure a woman that had to move out of her tiny house, I think she had purchased unrestricted land and they still came back with some rules and she wasn't able to stay in the tiny house. So I just would say dot your I's and cross your T's to ensure that you can actually have a tiny house on wheels on said property, and then also do your due diligence on the area around that unrestricted land for personal safety. That's always a big thing that we need to be aware of. So I think those would be the two things that I have, that I would, as tips. And sorry, I don't have more for you right now. When trying to advocate for zoning that accommodates tiny houses, is there standard language that can be used as a model? There are some videos out that talk about specifics, that speak specifically for around zoning for tiny houses. I'm not giving them a shout out because I don't deal with the people. So maybe that's petty, but not petty. I don't deal with them for reasons associated with not being inclusive and not being willing to listen and learn when people are saying you're not being inclusive. So there's that. But there are some videos out there that talk about zoning, and how to approach those conversations. Oftentimes it's as much building code enforcement as it also is zoning. And so it's two conversations. Code deals with the structure, and zoning deals with how the land is, what the land allows. And so it is a twofold conversation. You're not just having to have a conversation with zoning, you also need to have a conversation with code enforcement as to what can be allowed on the property. For example, when I ran into issues with the city of Charlotte, zoning was okay with allowing me to keep my tiny house on the property if I could get code enforcement on board, and I could not get them on board. So understand that that is a twofold conversation. I do recommend, kind of, there's some of the cities in California that are allowing tiny houses. You can Google them, the cities, and see the work that's been done, and how they got to the points and the things that they move through. Zach Griffin is a resource. Giffen, I don't think his name is Griffin. He was on Tiny House Nation. But using those as kind of the model would be helpful. Let's see. Yeah, that's what I was saying. In some unrestricted areas, you may need to go fully off grid, and that's a challenge. It's not impossible. In fact, I interviewed Zani, Off Grid Homestead. She's on Instagram. I think that's Off Grid Homestead. She was one of my, in the conversation series, she was one of my early interviews, and they're off grid. But that might not necessarily be what you want to do, but it's not impossible. But you want to ensure that you know the rules. Oh, thank you very much. And you're very welcome. I'm glad you find some use here. I always feel like I'm just talking aimlessly. Okay, I plan on having each one off-grid with solar. Texas is the only state with no zoning laws in rural country land. I also plan on rainwater harvesting. It sounds like you have a great plan. Again, check on the areas for personal safety. Those areas often are not without challenge. So do your due diligence in that area too. Michelle, thank you. I don't really think it's petty that there's some people in the movement that for years I've tried to help them understand inclusivity and the need for diversity. And then I kind of saw them switch around the time of George Floyd's murder, when corporate speak was to elevate Black voices, um, and I saw them then go through a switch, but it was a switch because it was all the buzz, elevating Black voices, and then because they also realized if I elevate these Black voices on my channels, I can also make money off of these Black voices. And so really ultimately there's some benefit to them, because prior to, you couldn't understand the benefit of elevating Black voices when you had someone telling you the need to elevate Black voices. And so that's why they won't get any love over here on my channel. But the information is out there. Like, I don't say bite your nose to spite your face, but I'm not highlighting them. Let's see. Okay. Regenerative life, Wayne. That was a challenge for me, and I know how to to say the word. Sorry. Um, it looks like you're well on your way. I would love to stay in the loop of what you do, and I'm excited for you. It sounds like you're making some progress. So congratulations to you. Um, Keep us posted and be safe. Absolutely. That's what they do for a few months and then scale them back. That, like, there's ultimately some benefit to them. What's in it for them if they realize they can make money. Anyway, I'm not gonna go on that. It's Juneteenth weekend, so I'm gonna stay in this other place and not call these folks out today. Um, yes, absolutely. Safety, 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 safety. I've run into that issue twice, and so I always want to speak to the need for us to do our extra due diligence from a safety perspective. There's a young woman who is building out a schoolie in the North Carolina area. She's not too far from where I am, and she purchased some land, um, and she's having problems with her neighbors. And it's been on the news. Her neighbors are very sketchy. They've vandalized her bus and some other things that she has on her property, and she's not feeling safe. Obviously, not feeling safe on the property. And now, she owns this property, and it doesn't seem like the local officials are doing much to assist her. And so, it is one of the things, that'll make you catch a case. And one of the things that just really is troublesome, that we still have to go through this, not to make me cuss, in 2023. So I just, the importance before you pay money for some property, driving through an area at all times of the day, night, weekends, holidays, just driving through to get an idea of what's in that area so that you can get the full picture, is important. All right. Any other questions? Yes, you should get on that. Sounds like a good project. Oh yeah, Michelle, it is. Them folks, they just can't manage themselves to be decent people. All right, any more questions in the comments? Thank you all for being here again with me on Sunday. I expect to have a guest next Sunday, so I'm working on that, and hope to get my schedule back together and get on point for these sessions. Yeah, it's a major concern. It is a major concern, and it's why I share my journey, because been there, done that, and as much as I can help us to, there's no way I can help us not have to go through it, because I can't do that, but the awareness and the importance of us knowing what's out there, and then awareness for our counterparts and the allies to help them understand what's going on, and because ending racism is not our job, it's their job. And so because it's not their experience, most of the time I won't say most of the time, a lot of times they're not familiar with what it is that we're experiencing. So it's important to share that information, and for our personal safety and for our community. But then it's also important for them to do the work to um, to fix this. Yeah, you saw her article. Yep, yep, absolutely. That's important to do. California homes and tiny homes both are so expensive. It feels both are nearly about out of reach. Sometimes it feels like a big circle. I don't have a magic answer to that. Right now, I think everything is expensive. I think we saw a major shift around the pandemic with the supply chain and cost of things, and the cost of tiny houses. I always say I my tiny house would probably cost maybe 2 3 times what it cost when I built it to try to build it today. So I can relate to that. Um, Generally, building it yourself is going to be the cheapest way to get to tiny house ownership, but not everybody has those skills. It also is, expense and learning curves and time, and there's a trade-off for attempting to do the work yourself versus hiring professionals. So I unfortunately don't have a magic answer for you, and I hate that it feels like it's a circle. I would say don't give up, and just you know keep thinking of ways to navigate it, and um, hopefully, as I have opportunity to that I become aware of, that I can share, I absolutely will do that. Um, I do know the only builder I know that I think, and I can't speak to cost now, but I've heard Incredible Tiny Homes has an opportunity where you can build along with them and do some of the work, and I think that eliminates some of the labor cost. I don't know what their wait and timelines are. I don't even know if that's still an option that they offer, but um, look into that. And then again, as I keep thinking of um, things that I'll be able to, I'll share. Um, Shipping containers. I had a guest on. We're talking about shipping containers. Not necessarily the paint is unsafe. It varies from container to shipping container. So I don't want to characterize them all as unsafe. Shipping containers are possibly cheaper. Like I said, I did interview someone talking about that. Um, Using a shipping container, though, is a different process, and that is putting it on foundation and going through the permitting process. So it is a different type of build than a tiny house on wheels. But I always say, do the research. If you don't intend to move it, you've got land. Explore all of the options for sure. Thank you very much. Same to you. That's beautiful. Thank you very much for sharing that. I'm happy to have you here. Happy to have inspired you. That is really beautiful. Thank you so much. All right, congratulations. Yeah, keep us in the loop. I'm excited for you. Yep, costs are expensive. Costs have risen for sure. I'm glad you think this is good dialogue. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, I'm adding this tip from Wayne. And here's a plug for Incredible Tiny Houses. Okay. All right. See. So see, it looks like she looked into incredible tiny houses. Oh, okay. It doesn't sound like they're offering that anymore. Congratulations that you're waiting for yours to be built. Keep us posted. All right. I am going to, I don't see any other questions. It's a few minutes to 1. I am going to close out. I'm going to do some things for Juneteenth and get back out and enjoy the weekend in celebration. And I hope that you all are as well. Thank you for spending this hour out of your day with me. It always means a lot. I appreciate you all for being here. Always, always, always. All right, next Sunday, I will be back. Hoping I have a guest, an informative guest, so you all can quit seeing me talking. And that's it. So I hope everybody has a great rest of your day. And again, this has been part of the series Creating Home, a Tiny House series. Has been the What's Your Question segment of that. And absolutely, same to you. Thank you. I try to have new and live content every Sunday at 12 p.m. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. If you find that this video is helpful to you, I hope that you will like it. You'll share it. You'll tell your friends. You'll all come back next Sunday. And then be sure to subscribe to my channel and turn on the notifications so that you'll know when content is available. All right, that's it. Happy Sunday. Happy Juneteenth weekend. Happy Juneteenth day tomorrow. Everyone have a great weekend and be safe. Take care. Absolutely. Same to you. Take care.